York's talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
I'll keep your eyes on the road, you have to pound the wheel. Keep your eyes on the road, you have to pound the wheel. Yeah, we're going to the roadhouse, it's gonna have a good time. Yeah, the back of the roadhouse, I got some bungalows. Yeah, the back of the roadhouse, I got some bungalows. And that's for the people who like to go down slow. Let it roll, baby, roll. Let it roll, baby, roll. Let it roll, baby, roll. Let it roll all night long.
Roadhouse Blues. Jim Morrison, The Doors, classic. Oh, I see the fugitive is back. He was on the road claiming that he is not the wanted guy who had been arrested 85 times on the subway for liking to play with knives and slicing and dicing people. That's right, our own Matt Blaze. Clearly, that name is an alias. I have no idea where he's been the last 2 weeks, but he's clearly been on the road. But back here at WABC, his place to be, as he will be joining Dominic Carter, who will be in the bullpen warming up from 11 to 1, and then the Mamalou Frank Morano from 1 to 5. And then the broadcast day starts all over again with Noam Laden as we're back on the attack. Normal programming in full effect, but we were live and local all during the extended holidays from Christmas to Hanukkah to New Year's. We didn't miss a beat. We didn't miss you, Matt Blaze, that's for sure. But Nancy's in the house because this is the time, the 2 hours, that we do the deep dive on the stories of the day, and then it's followed up by the Animal Welfare Hour from 10 to 11, the most listened of the many hours of programming that I participate in all during the week here at WABC. And let's start out with the story, bar none. It started in Singapore, Nancy, in 1975. They decided to impose congestion pricing. And then it swept through Europe. London, followed by Stockholm, Milan, and Gothenburg in Sweden. The idea was toyed about in San Francisco and Chicago, but never put into effect. And back in 2013, here in New York City, the billionaire mayor who thought that everybody had a price, anybody could be bought and bribed, Michael Bloomberg, thought he was on his way to imposing congestion pricing here in New York City. He so desperately wanted that. And Sheldon Silver, who was the most powerful Democrat in all of Albany, sat in that room with Michael Bloomberg and basically did a Julius Caesar thumbs down. And that was the end of congestion pricing in 2013, when nothing the billionaire could do, Michael Bloomberg. But then it was Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, King Cuomo II, the son of Mario Faccia Bruta Cuomo, King Cuomo I, who as governor said, oh, congestion pricing, that's the answer to all our mass transit needs. And he passed it, signed it into the law, lobbied it, promised it in 2018. Now that he's no longer in office and planning to run for mayor and score the daily double of destroying the state and then trying to destroy this city over my dead body, Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, he's now vacillating. He's saying, well, yeah, you're right. I was the author of congestion pricing, but I'm saying this is not the right place. This is not the right time. But in the future, absolutely. So he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too, Andrew Evil Eyes. Come on. What a Quizler. What a Quizler this guy is. But last night, as I took to the airwaves, Nancy, at 12 midnight, there was a cavalcade of dysfunctional misfits who had assembled right on the corner of 61st Street, West 61st and Broadway, with the first person to be hit with congestion pricing, $9, was just about ready to go through the tolling apparatus that has cost millions to install. And they were cheering. Oh, my God, you had these Pee Wee Herman look-alike types, on their bicycles with their bicycle helmets. Look like, real geeks, real dweebs. Elected officials who look like, oh, my God, they've never been in the subway in their life, but, they're cheering on congestion pricing. You would have thought they would have had thousands, like the dropping of the ball in Times Square. They've been fighting so many years for this. And they were led by Jerry the Whale Nadler.
Oh, yeah, I did see him there. You could barely see him there, but he was there.
He was drooling. He was like mumbling and
He had
stumbling.
no idea where he was, that's for sure.
Exactly. They brought him out there like the dog and pony show. There's only like 24 people.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure everyone who was cheering, they have taxpayer-funded SUVs that they ride around in, so I'm not even sure if they know what this is.
Exactly. They don't ride the subway. Come on.
And they certainly don't pay that congestion pricing.
No. But
we pay it for them, right?
But they were lobbying for it for 5 years. They were cheering it on. They were popping the champagne, all 24 of them. And this is what it sounded like.
Are we ready? Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy congestion pricing. Was that weak or what? I want to hit it one more time. Now, they've been working on this for 5 years. They've been claiming this is the salvation to all of the problems in New York City, that will become more green, that the subways will have more riders, the buses will have more riders, there'll be less traffic from four-wheel vehicles, cars, vans, trucks, SUVs, and 18-wheel tractor trailers. So after 5 years, and by the way, the biggest lobbyists of all were Uber and Lyft to get this.
Surprise, surprise.
Millions of dollars, whining, dining, and pocket lining first, Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo. And then Kathy Holcomb, always open for a bribe, that grifter that she is, and her husband. Millions they spent lobbying. And I'll explain to you why. You would say, but wait, they're four vehicles, right? Uber and Lyft, they're like four-wheeled vehicles. Yeah, but they're only paying $1.50. The rest of you suckers are paying $9. See, they knew it was coming.
Well, yeah, that's in addition to their already overcharged prices when you're riding the Uber and all their little line item taxes.
Exactly. So they got over like fat rats. They read the tea leaves and they said, this is going to happen. There's too many liberals, progressives, and socialists in the city council and the state legislature. So we're going to get ahead of the curve. And by us supporting it and whining, dining, and pocket lining all these socialists who hate capitalism except when it goes into their pockets, the money, we're going to be ahead of the curve, and we're only going to have to pay $1.50.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, that Lyft also owns City Bike. So they're behind this whole entire push to have all of these bike lanes that go nowhere and aren't protected, and there's not really being used. So, more of the lanes they're cutting the lanes of traffic at the same time they're benefiting from the lesser lanes. And
by the way, they also raised the price of leasing the city bikes in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and I still believe that, I firmly believe that name needs to be changed immediately, because I think it's some BS that they got the naming rights, which is one of the biggest things anything even has in the first place. That was a bailout that was done by taxpayer dollars. And somehow Citibank still gets the naming rights on the stadium, and then they get this, which has stolen a lot of real estate in New York City somehow. So how dare they take the name, too? That's our place. That should be the people's bike.
Yeah, but you see, they really love Citibank. When you want to commit a crime, 9 out of every 10 criminals always use City Bikes. Now, you mean to tell me that they actually use a debit card to pull it out of the rack? Are you kidding? They steal the freaking City Bikes. They ride around. They do drive-by shootings. When they go in, and they like locusts through a cornfield. They run back out on their city bikes, with everything they've shoplifted, and they take off. Oh yeah, sure. They were renting that city bike. Sure they were. But anyway, we digress, ladies and gentlemen. One more time, a moment in history. New York City, the first city in the nation to have congestion pricing. And man, you would have thought it was Dick Clark, an American Bandstand, as they were welcoming in the new year. Who is that dweeby borough president who was up there high in the sky, along with that MTA chairman, money-taking agency chairman? Like two geeks, like Beavis and Butthead, just celebratory. I mean, they were like, oh my God, they were like Elon Musk and Vivis, or whatever the hell his name is, right? Listen to it. Listen to the excitement. Listen to all the planning of 5 years to destroy people's lives and take their hard-earned money. And it could only muster up 24 people led by the whale, Gerald Nadler, who didn't even know where he was.
Are we ready? Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy congestion pricing. I mean, our numbers, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. But if you happen to be like Matt Blaze, a sucker from New Jersey, right, who does not use mass transportation, I have actually spied on Matt Blaze riding up to the facilities here at WABC as our board operator on Sunday nights. He's in a rent-a-wreck, a demolition derby reject, and you have been offered a $3 discount to New Jersey Blue Bozo drivers. Used to be your license plates were blue. We called you Blue Bozos. Never trust a Jersey driver. But if you're coming in off the GW Bridge where you're already paying, the price of a reverse mortgage and a payday loan just to get across the GW Bridge, or you're coming through the Lincoln and Highland Tunnel, guess what? We're so nice to you. We're giving you a $3 discount. Yay! Instead of $9, the Blue Bozos from Jersey are only paying $6. Yay! Yay! Isn't Kathy Holcomb so nice to you? She's giving you back $3. But you don't get that discount right away. You got to hope that New York State actually refunds you that money. Yeah, you'll be waiting more than 90 days, more than vendors waited for Donald Trump to actually pay his bills when he was running the 3 casinos in Atlantic City. You'll be waiting a month of Sundays. Our number's 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. Nancy, you've done the deep dive. What are some of the things that people can look forward to, especially with the start of the work week in just a few hours, as, well, soon the sun will be up. You'll be gnome-laden doing the 1 hour of news, followed by Sid Rosenberg, who's back, Sid and Friends, from 6 to 10, when the bulk of the traffic will be out there. But I don't think anybody really understands how many different ways you can get screwed thinking that you're really not having to pay the congestion pricing if you just stay on the FDR Drive, if you stay on the West Side Highway. But let me tell you something. Specifically the Manhattan, Williamsburg, and Queensboro bridges, as well as the Queens Midtown Tunnel, they connect on the Manhattan side. So a lot of you are thinking, oh, I'm okay. No, you're not. Because it surfaces on the streets, so drivers will be told you'll be clipped. There's no escape for you.
Yeah, it's actually incredible how much money that you have to spend just coming into the city itself. So Lincoln Tunnel and Holland Tunnel, this is with Easy Pass. It's $21.38. Like again, I mean, there's no way else to call this. This is just a poor tax. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what's going on here. I mean, anyone who can afford it, obviously they will, because it's easier and better and safer than going on the subway. So that's a problem.
And since the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, I'll never call it the U Carey Tunnel. Nobody ever does. What a waste of money that was. I think by my husband-in-law, when he was governor, David Patterson, all these naming rights, RFK Bridge. Nobody calls it the RFK Bridge. It's the Triborough Bridge. Wasted millions of dollars in renaming bridges. And then, of course, there's the 59th Street Bridge, a.k.a. Queensboro Bridge, a.k.a. Ed Koch Bridge. You think you could settle on one freaking name? Just know, if you think you're going to beat the $9 clip, again, for all of you cognoscente, mostly coming from the East River crossings, specifically the Manhattan, Williamsburg, and Queensboro bridges, as well as the Queens Midtown Tunnel, they connect on the Manhattan side only to surface streets within the zone. So guess what? You're going to get clipped. Now, if you're coming in through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and the Brooklyn Bridge, that's accessible directly from the FDR Drive or the West Side Highway. Motorists using those crossings won't be charged. So that means, can you imagine the backup at the Brooklyn Bridge and the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel?
And it's horrific already as it is. So, again, doubling down on that. And then the other problem is you have people who do come from like northern Manhattan or even outside, and now just to avoid that extra toll when you go, below 60th Street. So all of the places right above 60th Street are now getting ready for people doing like the equivalent of like a park and ride and just looking for any space that maybe has like an open for parking, which, in the city, there's not that many of them, but you're going to have waiting and congestion and lines for that, people waiting for a space. You know how crazy that can get.
And let's face it, there's plenty of parking in the South Bronx. If you want to take a chance and park your car there and jump on the 4, 5, or the 6 train, or the 2, the 3, and the 5 train, you could take a chance.
You could.
Hunts Point is right there, so if they hotwire your car, the Chop Shop's a quick ride up to Bruckner Boulevard. So, yeah, you'd probably want to park a lot closer to Manhattan and be in Manhattan than up in the South Bronx. But oh boy, aren't you going to have fun finding plenty of free parking in the South Bronx. The problem is when you take the train back, you might have been stabbed up, robbed. You might have been, your senses attacked by every conceivable smell of urine and defecation and vomit. And when you finally reach the surface at 138th and 3rd, where's my car? It's in Chop Shop Hell there in Hunts Point. Already been chopped up, and some of the parts already been sent across the ocean to foreign countries that are in need of those parts. The New York experience now with congestion pricing. 1-800-848-9222.
WABC.
Check this out. No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
And you can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
You get a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere. Maybe we make a deal. Maybe together we can get somewhere. Any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove.
Great song by Tracy Chapman. Fast Car.
You got a fast car. I got a plan to get us out of here. Been working at the convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. Won't have to drive too far. Just cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs and finally see what it means to be living. See, my old man's got a problem. He live with the bottle, that's the way it is. He says his body's too old for working. His His body's too young to look like his. My mama went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. I said, somebody's got to take care of him. So I quit school and that's what I did.
I don't think we want to even talk. This is such a good song here, Nancy.
You got a fast car.
Fast car, Tracy Chapman. Well, guess what? If your fast car has paper license plates, you're going to beat the congestion pricing. I mean, how many cars do you see all the time, Nancy, with paper plates? You know, these temporary plates that are really fake plates.
Yeah, I've seen those, definitely.
Then you got the special items you can buy to cover your plates so the license plate readers don't work.
Yeah, those are good.
And then you got all the out-of-state plates that turn out to be fake. So think of how many people are going to beat the system. And what are you going to do? You're going to put a cop at every location. You're not using facial recognition technology. Isn't that incredible? They use license plate reading technology. They don't have a problem with that. But God forbid we use the facial recognition technology to nail people who are beating the system. But no. That would be racist. That would be so unfair. We spend millions of that and we don't even use it. Even to catch criminals. We'll deal with that later on. Well, let's get to the calls, Nancy. It's Chris calling from Bethpage. Your turn to be heard here at WABC. Chris.
Hey, Curtis and Nancy. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so, guys, first of all, I was born and raised, I lived in Mineola. This morning, Tom DiNapoli, who's from Mineola, was on with the Reverend and the Rabbi. Please tell me you heard him, that interview. It was disgusting.
It was.
The state comptroller.
It was.
Oh, my God. It was disgusting. They asked him, hey, you lost $700 million on the NTA. How do you estimate that? You know what his answer was? We don't really know how to estimate it. We really don't. We just throw a number out there, which leads me to believe, Curtis, it's got to be more than $700 million that they lost. I've talked to you about this before. The turnstile jumpers it's off the charts. It has to be more than $700 million. So that's number one. They lied to you about the amount of money, okay? And this whole thing, and he was defending this congestion pricing too. He's like, oh, we're going to be able to build stuff now with it and stuff. It's a money grab. It's disgusting, and they all should be ashamed of themselves. But the reason I called, though, was to say, can somebody else other than the Reverend and the Rabbi get Tom DiNapoli on? Like, maybe can he go on with Katz or you? Can you interview him and have a serious interview with the guy instead of what I heard this morning?
Chris, let me tell you about Tom DiNapoli. He was an assemblyman. He was doing his tax returns with H&R Block in a diner in Nassau County when the crook of all crooks, Sheldon Silver, needed a new controller for the state of New York because Alan Hevesy went to jail for corruption, the state controller. So he went up to Tom DiNapoli and said, Tom, you're my guy. I want you to be the controller. He goes, I don't know anything about that. Look, I use H&R Block to do my tax returns. He goes, don't worry about it. Don't worry. You're my boy. Tom DiNapoli's been there ever since. How the hell do they not know how much they lose through fare evasion is ridiculous. Estimates are $700 million every year. 50% of the people no longer pay their fare when entering a city bus. 30% go under the turnstile, over the turnstile, through the emergency gate, do not pay their subway fare. That figure is going up every time other people see that their peers are not paying the fare and there are no consequences. They figure, what, am I, a sucker? I got to be paying the fare. And they just raised the fare again right before the beginning of the year. So, if you raise $1 billion on congestion pricing, and according to Tom DiNapoli, he's not sure, but you lose $700 million in fare evasion. So maybe you make $300 million. So you're really doing this to offset the fare evasion. So people who drive cars, vans, SUVs, pickup trucks, 18-wheel tractor trailers, you are going to have to subsidize or the fare evasion. That's really what this is. Instead of fare enforcement.
No, what it is really is that we have this again. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a poor tax, specifically meant to just almost like squeeze out the middle class. The real place where the money goes, and to your point, they don't really take the stats on it. So I don't even think there's any attempt to try and figure out how much how much people are actually avoiding the fare. But the capital plan, the capital budget, where they keep doing these excessive, ridiculous things, they just approved a 4-year plan for $68 billion. That's the real money. They keep trying to pit all the regular people against each other with these tiny increases, which are huge to us. Meanwhile, they're stealing all the money through their capital plans.
Yeah, these contracts, just so you know how an MTA money-taking agency contract works, the contractor and the union come to an agreement on feather bedding, no-show jobs, how much is going to be required to pay the union workers. They go to the MTA, and the MTA just rubber stamps.
Yeah, and we consistently have the highest, amount of money that's put into building every foot of track, every system of subway. So this is where it's going. It's going to all of the accountants, all of the attorneys, all of these consultants. That's where the money goes. And then we just, the sucker taxpayers, like Curtis says, it just gets sprinkled onto us to pick up tiny tabs. And
they are insistent on adding additional stations to the 3rd Avenue subway. Insistent. It's not needed. The last station is 96th Street, the Q train. Oh, but we gotta build more stations. We gotta go north to 125th Street. No, you don't. There's no demand. No. I'm sorry. There's no. Oh, it's $4 billion a station, and then hundreds of $1 million for like a quarter mile of track. Mm-hmm. It is just astronomical, and we don't need it. We don't need it.
Yeah, not to mention the quality of life that exists around all of these crazy constructions that are going on all the time. They'll take 5 years. There's dust flying in the air, the noises. Like, there's a lot of fallout to the businesses, to the people who are renting, who are living there. I mean, it has a lot more than they're saying in that sense. And again, it's really the capital plans. They're stealing money consistently that way.
Let's see if I can answer a question here. Matt Blaze asked this question. You should be grateful you're getting a $3 rebate, Jersey folks. You know, if you come through the Holland-Lincoln Tunnel and you get ripped off over the George Washington Bridge, you get $3 back out of the $9. But what, Matt asks, what if I leave the congestion zone and then go back? Will I be charged twice? Ordinary motorists, those who drive the everyday cars, SUVs, or pickup trucks, you're subject to getting clipped for $9. You can only be charged once a day. Don't you feel so good? You can go back and forth. Just cross the line right at 60th Street, back and forth, and just say, I'm only paying one CC. But there is a big exception for larger vehicles. Oh. Trucks and buses will be charged each time they enter the zone. And for drivers subject to the once-a-day toll, the system will reset at midnight. That means drivers who enter the zone in the early morning hours between 5 a.m. or on a weekday will be charged only the 75% discounted overnight rate. That don't you feel so much better? Don't you feel so much better? The Kathy Holcomb isn't picking your pockets the way you originally thought for $15. In fact, she's lessened the burden. Say thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy Holcomb. You're full of nonsense, you grifter.
Yeah, a lot of thieves out there, aren't there?
Let's go to Jack in Manhattan. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Jack.
Hey, Curtis. Listen, we spoke before. I speak to you normally in the middle of the night. I'm a retired law enforcement guy. Wait till you see all the reports of stolen license plates of parked cars above 60th Street. The reports are going to go through the roof, and all the people that own those plates are going to go through hell trying to get the fines reversed. If they can take a catalytic converter off in less than a minute, it ain't going to take them long to take plates up and down the streets in Upper Manhattan above 60th Street. So you're going to see reports going through the roof. And they're going to put them on these cars, and they're going to get the people that own the plates are going to get whacked.
And just think, Jack, if you park your car in the South Bronx, They will not only take your plates, they're going to take your car too to the chop shop in Hunts Point. So when you finally work your way back on the subway past sleeping homeless people, emotionally disturbed, when you haven't been robbed and haven't had your throat slit, and you actually come up to 138th and 3rd and you go, I made it. Where the hell's my car? They didn't just steal my plate. They stole my whole freaking car. And then try to find it, right? You call up the local precinct. No habla English. What do you mean, no habla English? This is the South Bronx. English is a second language. You got to speak Spanish. Sorry. So don't even bother going to the pound to think that the cops sent a tow truck and you were parked in a non-parking zone with only Spanish signs there in the South Bronx. No. Your car is in the chop shop. All those chop shops in Hunts Point, they've already been chopped up. It's over. Sorry. See if you can get insurance to cover it. And then your insurer is going to say, right, Allstate, and you were parking in the South Bronx. Can you explain that? You work in Midtown, and you were parking your vehicle near 138th and 3rd. Why were you doing that? So I could avoid getting clipped for $9. Well, guess what? We're not going to cover the theft of your automobile. Take us to court. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Pamela in New Jersey. Your turn to be heard here on WABC, Pamela.
Yeah, to add to what that gentleman just said, they're going to start stealing handicap plates because they said handicap plates and placards are for free in congestion. You watch how many people are going to get their plates stolen in that area. And then the knuckleheads who voted for these Marie Antoinettes and King Louis that are running this country and they slipped New Year's presents on all of us. New Jersey, they're fighting congestion pricing, my ass. They just upped the gas tax 2.6% on gas. I filled up last week. I just looked this week. It's 15 cents more a gallon. And they increased all the tolls in New Jersey. And I tell you, you people who voted for these knuckleheads and who cheered this on tonight, guess where you're going to pay? The people who are sitting home on welfare or whoever voted for these people, and they're not the middle class having to travel and work their asses off. Guess what else their present is to you? Food is going to go sky high. All your truckers and everything are being taxed through the unbelievable rates. They are going to put it all on you people. So when you start complaining that you can't afford food, think about who you voted for. And also Biden, the federal government, just increased the corporate tax. Yellen put through a special extra tax on small businesses. They sneak that on the first of the year. They do it every year, every Christmas time, every first of the year. And this is their going out of business sale. And they have just ripped off the middle class to say so long because the Republicans in a lot of areas won.
Pamela, I gather you were not with Gerald the Whale Nadler at 12 midnight last night when it came on with the better side of the other side of midnight. He and 24 these geeks, these Pee Wee Hermans on their bicycles, with their bicycle helmets, all happy, that, oh, yeah, we're going to do away with gas burning and electric vehicles if it's the last thing we do.
Are we ready? Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy congestion pricing.
Yeah, seriously, how dare you celebrate your own inefficiencies? That's so disgusting.
But it was so weak.
And it's so weird.
They worked on this for 5 years.
Yeah, that was a real poor rollout.
And all they could get out with 24 people at midnight, led by Gerald the Whale Nadler, who didn't even know what he was doing there when they put the microphone in his face for Channel 7 Eyewitness News. He goes to his aide-de-camp, and why am I here? Why am I here at midnight? Oh, God. You know what this is just going to do? Increase the flight out of New York City and out of New York State and out of New Jersey. New Jersey is the number one state for flight now. Cost of living, property taxes, number one. Number two, Illinois. you can understand Chirac. It's like being in the middle of a battle between the Ukraine and the Russian soldiers. And then number 3 is New York. From Buffalo to Brooklyn, more flight. Fear leads to flight. Cost leads to flight. Lack of quality of life leads to flight. And congestion pricing will lead to flight.
WABC. New York's talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? You chuck it on that one, you chuck it on this one, you chuck it on your mother and you chuck it on your
blood clot, Yankee man, you're rude boy, Matt Blaze, rude boy. I gotta tell you, this announcement that was put out by the NYPD, All Points Bulletin, dangerous maniac on the loose, on the 2 and the 5 train, was the weakest thing I've ever heard. Now, I can understand if this was Machine Gun Kelly. You know, the guy has a machine gun. He shot 62 people. He's on the lam. So the NYPD, which clearly has lost its mojo, its confidence, its macho, there's no machismo there anymore. They've taken away their nightsticks. They don't let them physically intervene. They basically tell the cops, just stare into your cell phones, sext and text, and act like you're just so totally disconnected you don't even want to see what's going on around you. And there aren't enough transit cops. There's a huge article in the New York Post by the bureau chief of the New York Post, Tina Moore, who indicates that Eric Adams wants to cut overtime. But that's not the overtime that was causing the problem. That was all of his cronies in the top levels of the police department that he appointed that were doling out excessive overtime if you would do them sexual favors. Like Jeffrey Madry. You give me oral sex, you get overtime. Anal sex, more overtime. Vaginal sex, oh, wow, we'll triple your overtime. That has nothing to do with cops going into the subways. You don't have enough cops. You need to give overtime. There's only 32,500 cops in the entire system. And you need a minimum of 38,000 cops. A minimum to do the job. 40,000 will give you a little bit of an edge. And let's go back to Comrade Bill de Blasio, the part-time mayor, the dope from Park Slope, who single-handedly destroyed this city that we love over 2 terms with his grifter wife, Charlene. He withdrew $1 billion from the police budget. Do you remember that, Nancy?
I recall.
Remember how the city council, they were dancing the horror and the Tarantella high-fiving one? Yeah, one another. Yeah, we took $1 billion. And then his lapdog commissioner, Dermot Shea, who should be ashamed of himself, actually said, yeah, I support the boss. This is a good thing. We're just going to reroute this money into youthful offender programs. What? They never put the $1 billion back. Eric Adams, he got sworn into office. I'm a cop's cop. He never put it back. In fact, he spent $5 billion on the illegal aliens. Never put a penny back into the police budget. So now we're screwed. We're screwed. And so they put out this all-points bulletin for this subway maniac called Jamar Banks. So I'm thinking when they put out this all-points bulletin, oh, man, this guy is like the worst conceivable criminal who ever operated within the subways, that the guy had a machine gun. You know, something that was like ominous. The guy had a knife. A knife.
A big knife.
And he would ride the 2 and the 5 train. He would never ride another train. He was a creature of habit. And they had to send down a special squad to find this guy. Like, really? A special tactical unit. He didn't cover himself up. He didn't wear a mask. You could see what his face looked like. It's like 2 cops couldn't nab this guy.
Yeah, apparently he frequents the number 2 and the number 5 subway lines, so that's his go-to travel
all the time.
Yeah,
he would never get off and find another train to sort of ride and stab people on. So let me give you what exactly caused the NYPD to have a meltdown, a freak out, and make this guy public enemy number 1, like so fearsome, so powerful, that they had to put together a tactical patrol unit to go find him and hunt him out. He's on the 2 and the 5 train.
Yeah, and he's carrying around a lot of items, like he's pushing a cart. I mean, he's not really traveling that fast.
He's got a cart with him. He's a homeless dude.
Yeah, he doesn't move too fast.
They're afraid of a homeless dude.
Yeah.
Now imagine if the cops are afraid of a homeless dude with a knife. Although I'll bet he had a pretty big knife, like a Rambo knife, you know.
Yeah, it was no joke that
like
knife.
A Ginzu knife. So this guy, public enemy number 1, they nabbed last night after an old points bulletin saying, oh my God, we got to put the city in lockdown. We got to close the subway system because Jamar Banks is at it. 52-year-old with a long rap sheet and history of mental illness. Well, we could have predicted that. Was nabbed by the special NYPD Tactical Patrol Unit along with the warrant squad around midnight at the 219th Street station of the number 2 train.
There we go.
God, that was difficult finding the guy. Let's see. He always rides the 2 and the 5 train. He has a very distinctive look. He doesn't mask up.
He has a knife.
They have a lot of photos of him, and he has this basket. That
cart.
A cart.
A
he
full
wheels,
cart.
Right, he wheels around with junk. Absolute
and
junk
a few bags
clutter.
as well. Like this.
A few bags. So they took him into the NYPD's Transit Bureau District in Manhattan and sweated him down.
Oh, boy. This is going to be tough.
He had been busted 87 times before.
Oh, okay.
And you say to yourself, 87 times? What is he doing out in the subways? Well, a lot of those times it was in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, but sometimes in the Bronx, Darcel Clark, the DA. He was an equal opportunity offender.
I think he's only like 52, right?
That's it.
So he's a real go-getter. Look at that criminal record.
He was carrying
quite the rap sheet, sir.
What had been described by police as a large knife, which he used in last week's attacks. Banks was last busted in November twice for petty theft and released with summonses, courtesy of Alvin Bragg. He's being held on charges of first-degree assault and third-degree weapons possession, and finally has been remanded to Rikers Island, no bail. The suspect looked disheveled when he was walked out of the transit district in cuffs Sunday afternoon with his torn white jeans collapsing down around his skinny legs to show his red underwear. So he was dressed like a homie, with his trousers down below his tuchus.
So he definitely couldn't run fast.
He refused to say a word. One woman yelled out, "You're disgusting." Alina Goldfein, a 19-year-old student, said, "Thank God public enemy number 1 is behind bars. I wasn't going to take the 2 of the 5 train any longer." You would think this guy was the son of Sam David Berkowitz, right? Oh, my God, this guy was riding the 2 and the 5 train every day as a homeless guy with the shopping cart, like filled with clutter and a big knife.
Yeah.
And they couldn't catch the guy. Man, this is really bad news. And they finally say that officers were warned that they should use extreme caution approaching this dangerous criminal because he might be carrying a knife. Who doesn't carry a knife nowadays? In fact, look at all the crimes that have been committed. Knives, shivs, ice picks. It's almost like nobody commits crimes with guns anymore. Used to be, it was all guns.
I guess those signs are working around the city.
Yes, a gun-free zone. So the criminals say, well, okay, I'll abide by that. I'll just carry a shiv.
Well, there you go.
So I'll bleed you out. I'll gut you out. I'll bleed you out.
And that's crazy because that, to me, is much more of a personal type of attack. Usually that's reserved for like crimes of passion, jilted lovers. to be able to knife someone so easily, we got a lot of psychopaths running out there.
Yes, well, this guy Banks wanted because he stabbed a 31-year-old man on the number 2 train at 14th Street, 7th Avenue, being consistent, the number 2 train. Like cops, all you had to do was put 2 cops out on the 2 train. You would have caught this guy a long time ago. He's also started an argument with an off-duty MTA cleaner, stabbed him up right under the armpit, and almost bled him out.
And I actually saw some video footage of that as well. When the police were assisting the person who had been stabbed. I mean, you can see the size of this knife actually sticking out of the worker's arm. It was disturbing.
By the way, Banks' rap sheet, 87 arrests, includes arrest for attempted murder, shocking, weapons possession, assault, criminal trespassing, turnstile jumping, petty larceny, and a whole bunch more, 500 Scott tissue papers long. Now, how long do you think he's going to be on Rikers before he's back riding the number 2 and 5 train?
Well, his arraignment is tomorrow. Oh, wait, actually it was today, but that doesn't say where he's at. They might have already let him go. He might be on the 2 train right now.
That's right, 2 train, 5 train, waving, at the cameras. I'm back.
Yeah, just look for the cart.
I'm back. This is the lamest all-points bulletin I've ever seen. Clearly an emotionally disturbed guy with one knife.
So how come Eric wasn't on that perp walk?
That's right. Instead of being on the Luigi perp walk, that's right.
With all the helicopters and stuff. He didn't want to stand next to this guy, apparently.
You don't come into my city, Luigi. But, hey, Banks, it's okay.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
You want to ride the 2 of the 5 train. I'm never down there. So, look.
Yeah, there you go.
This is sad.
Very.
You would think this was David Berkowitz, the 44 caliber killer. An emotionally disturbed guy wheeling around a cart with clutter in it, carrying a knife. And they had to assemble a special tactical patrol force with the warrant squad to take him down. Not good.
Yikes.
Not good. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jason in Yonkers. Your turn to be heard here, WABC, Jason.
Hey, hi, Curtis. Can you explain why the Staten Island ferry doesn't have a fare on it? The city is losing millions of dollars on that every year.
Well, especially all the tourists who know that you can get to see Our Lady of Liberty in the harbor, Ellis Island. You can get to see the Verrazano Bridge, Governor's Island, for nothing. You go back and forth. That was a gift that Rudy Giuliani gave to Staten Island for coming out in unprecedented numbers to elect him over David Dinkins. And the sponsor then was Guy Molinari, the borough president. So the gift, to the victor go the spoils, was free fare on the Staten Island ferry. You can make arguments about that. But boy, there aren't enough riders on the Staten Island ferry to affect what the congestion pricing will do. Let's go, if we can, to Mark in Florida. Your turn to be heard here on WABC, Mark.
Hello, Curtis. Nice to speak to you. I was listening to your overnight show last night. I was driving from New Jersey down back to Florida. And that hour that you spent between 2 and 3 o'clock, where you spoke about Debrina, and that was probably the most compelling hour of radio that I ever heard in my life. And certainly one of the more compelling things that you've ever done, at least I've heard. You brought this woman to life. And I tell you the truth, you had me choked up, especially at the end, because today happens to be my mother's birthday and my mother's gone. And thinking about her screaming out for her mother in the last minutes of her life was just overpowering. I mean, look, I've been a fan of yours forever. I used to live in New York. And, just what you did for that woman and to make it available for people to hear. My suggestion is that you speak to John or Margot or your station manager. That hour needs to be repeated. They have to put it into some of these other shows or put it in when people can hear it, because not everybody's up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I know you don't like anybody going to sleep on you. I know you said it a long time. But just the idea that, the way you humanized her was just something that, was probably the most compelling thing I've ever heard on radio. And, You were the right guy to do it. Nobody else was going to do it. You did it.
Well, thank you. And Debbie Kawam is her name. We're going to recreate some of that in the next hour, Mark. We're going to truncate a form of it. But I even told Nancy this morning when I got to the apartment, I said, out of the 35 years of radio I've done, and I've done a lot, that was my finest hour. There's no doubt about it. Because you know how we say constantly, say her name, and almost nobody knows her name, Mark. Even though we know who she is now. And I think what it is, if a woman is leading somewhat of a normal life and she's savagely killed, like has happened of late by these illegal aliens, we always say her name, and rightfully so. But with Debbie Kawam, she had a normal upbringing until, I would say, later on in her 30s. She began to sort of slowly begin to break down. And I think as much as that crime horrified all of us, Mark, and we'll never forget it, as she stood there in the doorway of that F train holding the rail, a human torch, while the monster who had set her afire was fanning the flames, the Guatemalan, that we really don't want to know about her life, because emotionally disturbed people or homeless people, we don't want them to be in the trains. We don't want them to come into harm's way, but we would like to believe that they're different than us, Mark. And I think what I was able to do is show everyone listening all over the world last night that Debbie Kawam was no different than anybody's daughter or grandchild or mother out there, that she was a Jersey girl. She was a Jersey girl from Tom's River, Little Ferry. She had a great background, a great growth period, which I'm going to recreate some of, and that something happened that caused the breakdown. And what Mark is referring to is just before she came to New York to meet her demise on that F train, she went back to Tom's River, disheveled, clearly mentally impaired, but still somewhat lucid, went to the home that she grew up in Tom's River, hoping to find her mother, because she knew she was having problems. She knocked on the door. A woman named Olga answered, the new owner of the building, and she said, "Is my mother here?" And she said the mother's name. And Olga said, No, dear, we just bought the house. Your mother and father have moved out. I can call the realtor and find out where they are for you. Do you have a cell phone? She no longer had a cell phone. She walked off, mumbling to herself. And her last words in Tom's River were she was crying out for her mother. She then came to New York. She was in Grand Central Station. A homeless outreach unit came across her, had her placed in a shelter in the Bronx. Imagine you're coming from Tom's River, Little Ferry, and they send you to a shelter in the Bronx without escort. They just said, this is the train you take. You go to the shelter. She went to the shelter. No doubt she was probably traumatized by that experience. Left the shelter, began to ride the trains, and in less than a week later, this monster from Guatemala that Joe Biden, Harris, Mayorkas, Hochul, and Eric Adams fed, clothed in a shelter in East New York run by Samaritan Village, was smoking $30 a day at K2 and drinking cheap vodka, decided to torture her up. And that's her story. And nobody seems to know her name. Nobody seems to want to know her story, which is like so many other Jersey girls. And we will reprise it for all of you up next. But it is, as Mark said, it was my finest hour in 35 years of talk radio. And it had to be said.
talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
She wakes up early every morning just to do her hair now because she cares, y'all. Her day wouldn't be right without her makeup. She's never had a makeup. She's just like you and me, but she's homeless. She's homeless. As she stands there singing for money, la da dee, la doo da, 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 la da dee, la doo da. In my sleep I see her begging, reaching, please. Although the fault is not mine, I ask God why. She's just like you and me, but she's homeless. She's homeless. As she stands there singing for money, la da dee, la doo da, 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 la da dee, la doo da.
You remember that moment? The State of the Union address. Marjorie Taylor Greene shouted up to President Joe Biden and said, "Say her name. Say her name." And he was distracted enough that he then blamed the deaths on an illegal alien, remember? And then within hours he had to sort of come back, Nancy, and so I didn't mean to say illegal alien.
Yeah.
Talking about that case in Georgia, the Venezuelan gangbanger who actually was arrested in New York City, was not detained, then took a bus at our expense, went down to Georgia, and killed a nursing student. The name is memorable. I'm not going to say it because I know many of you have memorized it. And that's good. That's good. You don't want to forget victims. But as bad, if not worse, is the image that is seared in our mindset of that woman who was turned into a human torch by that Guatemalan monster that we let into our country twice, that we fed, we clothed, we put him in Samaritan Village in East New York. He was treated better than our own homeless Americans, and some of whom are veterans and are emotionally disturbed, who are forced to ride the subways, especially now it's going to be an Arctic chill. They're all going to go into the subways and becomes a moving homeless hotel. If you're a migrant, oh no, you go to the Roosevelt Hotel, they put you up. If you're an American, no room for you in the inn. And the reason it's important that we know the back end of the story is that, Nancy, I deal with people every day, and they really don't want to know about the homeless, who they are, where they came from, or the emotionally disturbed. They'd like to think that they're different than them. They'd like to think that there's something wrong with them, and that's why they're in the subways. Because if at any moment they thought, my God, they're just like me, they come from the same towns I came from, something happened to them in their journey. And there, by the grace of God, go I. That's what I was taught by my father, Merchant Seaman Chester, when he would take me to the Bowery, to the flop houses. And when he would be home on leave, there'd be some of his friends there who had been seamen. And now all of a sudden they were drunk in flop houses, saying prayers at the Salvation Army for a bowl of soup. I said, Dad, what happened? This guy's your friend. You're having a conversation. Curtis, the man came back from sea. His wife was no longer there. The children had left. He was a shell of himself. Something happened to him. And there, by the grace of God, could go you or me. Never make fun of these people. They're no different than us. So that's lasted with me for a lifetime. I'm 70 now, and I hear his voice every time I'm in the subways, every time I'm dealing with the homeless and emotionally disturbed. That's why I don't have a fear of them. And they, for the most part, don't have a fear of me except when they have an episode. But this case, you all need to know who this woman was. Later on in life, she changed her first name to Debrina, but everybody knew her in Little Falls, New Jersey, as Debbie Kowam. She was a girl that people wanted to be around. Cheerleader with an inner glow. When she'd walk through the hallways of Passaic Valley Regional High School, everybody would high-five her. She'd be walking with her friends, striking a pose against a backdrop of Led Zeppelin posters, and she worked like almost everybody does who's from a blue-collar working-class home at Perkins Pancake House in her hostess uniform. In her 20s, Ms. Kowam was the life of the party. She'd be working, and every 3 months with a girlfriend, she would fly off to Vegas or the Caribbean, living the moment, never asking any money from anybody, working hard, and enjoying life. I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to that. You did it when you were growing up. You weren't married yet. You didn't have a lot of responsibilities. You work hard, and then you go and party for a weekend or two. And then later on would come the years of darkness that would lead to her being set afire on that number F train. And you say to yourself, how did she go from almost a Jersey girl, all-American girl story, where even the captain of the football team had chosen her to be the cheerleader, and the role of the cheerleaders in that high school was they would decorate the lockers before the game, and she would always decorate his locker in a different, unique way than anyone else. He was having a problem with math. It looked like he might have to be suspended from the team because he didn't meet the standards. And she helped him with the math. She said, no, you love playing football. I want to help you. I want to help you achieve your goal. And imagine all these people that she helped, that she grew up with, that she was always smiling, always somebody that the boys wanted to know, afraid to go up and talk to her because they would mumble and stumble because she was Miss Personality, the girl that every guy wanted to be with. Her father worked the assembly line of General Motors plant in Linden. Her mother worked in a bakery. There was no apparent problems in the house. You know, we're not talking an abusive household. It's like the kind of household we talk about that most Americans have grown up with. And then she went on to college. She had a lot of friends. She was, again, Miss Personality. But slowly, she began to change. And she left Montclair State College, which was right down the block from where she lived in Little Falls. Had a series of relationships. It didn't work out well with guys. Ended up down in Atlantic City working a series of jobs. Declared bankruptcy. A lot of Americans declare bankruptcy. And then the next thing you know, she's crawling into a bottle. So if you follow her, she's going from Atlantic City to all the Jersey Shore towns, and you can see she's getting tickets from police for being inebriated. So she clearly has a problem. But nobody in her hometown of Little Ferry or Tom's River knows anything about her because now she's no longer around. She no longer has her friends. She no longer has her family. And she's getting deeper and deeper into trouble with drugs, with alcohol. And then all of a sudden, she's now beginning to degrade emotionally and mentally. But nobody wanted to do an intervention. Nobody wanted to, because they looked at her and they said, she's young. You know, it's not like she's old and feeble. And then, as I said, she ended up going home to Tom's River looking for her mother. You know, when we're in our last days on this plane, some of the worst monsters that have ever lived, even those who are being put to death, who are being given the death penalty on murderers' row, the last person they call for is their mother. It always happens. When you're a child, you fall down, you bruise your knee. You don't ask for your daddy. You ask for your mom. And in your waning hours of your life, guys and gals are always calling out to their mother if she's alive or if she's no longer here. And that's exactly what this young lady did. She went to find her mother. And I think there's no more graphic a situation than in her time of peril, she was trying to find her family. She no longer had her cell phone. She no longer had her identification. But she went to the one place that she had been to thousands of times, that home, that blue-collar working-class home in Toms River. Knocked on the door hoping her mother would be there or her father. And instead it was a stranger, Olga, who was very nice to her. How can I help you? Is my mother here? Is my mother here? And she mentioned her mother's name. No. We just bought the house like a few weeks ago. Can I help you? Do you have a cell phone? No, I just want to see my mother. I'll call the realtor. I don't know where they resettle. I'm sure they know where they're living now. And she just burst out in tears, started to walk down the block, crying, screaming out for her mother. Apparently made her way to New York City. Just totally disheveled, totally disillusioned. Ends up in Grand Central Station. A homeless outreach unit finds her. And instead of sitting her down and talking to her and saying, well, you're a Jersey girl. You can't be here. This is not a good place for you. You're not an urban girl. You're not going to be able to survive in urban New York City. What did they do? They sent it to a women's shelter in the South Bronx. I got to tell you, I've been in a lot of shelters. They have shelters that are called MICA shelters for the emotionally disturbed. That's like One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. That is scary. And then there's the normal shelters where people are just basically scheming. It's like survival of the fittest, Darwinian. This is a girl from Toms River, Little Ferry. You know that your homeless outreach workers, how about taking the time to maybe try to find family members, friends, people, when they found out who it was, who that human torch was, said, if only anybody had contacted us, we had lost contact with her, we would have helped her. We would have brought her back to Toms River. We would have brought her back to Little Ferry. Oh my God, she died in flames on an F train in Coney Island on a Sunday morning at 7:30. You think we really tried our best to help her? Do you think that homeless outreach unit really tried their best? Or was she just another homeless person, emotionally disturbed person? Let's get her to a shelter. You see, every person, there used to be a program, Nancy, long before you were birthed. It was called The Naked City. And they would say, there's 1,000 stories in the Naked City. All of them different. Every one of these homeless people, every one of these emotionally disturbed persons has a story. If you actually take the time to get to know them, and I know it can be a frightening experience, and they smell, and they wallow in their own defecation and urine, and oftentimes they're like this, they're babbling and talking incoherently, but if you actually take the time to hear them, they tell you a story about who they are and where they came from. Just the other day on the F train in Coney Island, was a heavy-set black male, no shoes, sores on his feet, disheveled, smelly. I sat there and talked with him for about 10 minutes. Do you know that he had 2 transistor radios on him that he showed me, like we used to have as kids? You know what he listens to in the day? WABC. He said, my biggest problem is getting batteries. I run out of batteries. And he was telling me what I've said on the radio just in the past few weeks. Listening on the subway train. Could you ever have imagined that? Could you have imagined that this huge man, obviously a very complicated individual with severe emotional problems, wallowing in his own defecation and urine, his joy in life was listening to WABC through a transistor radio. He had the second one, and he showed me the batteries. He goes, this is my biggest problem, getting batteries. How are you going to find out about these people if you don't take the time to talk to them? Treat them like human beings. I think the problem was when Debbie finally ended up in New York. It wasn't like Margot Thomas. Remember that TV show? I'm here in New York City, Margot Thomas, that girl, and flings her bonnet in. No, this is as bad as it got. You don't want to be in New York City when you're a Jersey girl, or you're from Iowa or Minnesota, or you haven't grown up in an urban area and you don't know New York City. It's a monster. And this monster just chewed her up and spit her out, and this illegal alien savagely killed her. But if we were to go on the train right now, Nancy, if we were to go on that same F train and see all the emotionally disturbed, all the homeless people living on the subways, shame on us for allowing that to happen. Do you think anybody would know her name?
I don't think so.
Do you think anybody really wants to know her background, cares about where she came from? Or they're just gripped by the horror of seeing her become a human torch? I mean, that image will never escape our mindset. It is the most horrible crime that I have ever experienced in New York City in 70 years, and I've experienced a lot. I can never wipe that image out of my mind, and we have to make sure that nobody forgets who this woman is, where she came from, because there are a lot of other stories just like that. Debbie Kawam, who later on became Debrina, is no different than your daughters, your granddaughters, your mother, the kind of towns you grew up in. You ended up getting married, some of you. You went on to have your own careers. And you always trace your beginnings to your town, because America is based on villages, boroughs, towns. That's what America, the basis of America is. It's not the big cities. It's the suburbs. And look at what happened to her. So I told that story in length, 2 o'clock in the morning, gave it a full hour, aired it all out. I believe it was my finest hour in talk radio in 35 years. But I think because this is the most intimate form of communication ever created. Some say by Marconi, the Italian, others say by Tesla, the Serbian. It doesn't matter. TV does not do stories like this justice. It just shows you pictures and video. And you hear a little bit of babble in the background. But this, we can paint a picture. We can actually transport you, as I did for an hour, back to Toms River, to Little Falls, to the high school she went to, the college she went to, that a lot of our listeners also went to. How did she end up on one path and everybody else was on a different path? If we understood more of that, we would understand why more of our fellow citizens end up with severe emotional disturbing problems that put them on subways, that have them sleeping out in the streets, or flop houses, or shelters, or in drug rehab facilities, or in psychiatric hospitals. But if we don't take the time to find out, this is not an assembly line. This is not like you got a car and you got a problem and you take it to the mechanic, and the same mechanic looks at the car and he goes, I know that make and model. I know how to fix it. Humans are complicated. Takes a lot to fix a broken human being, and it can be done. Unfortunately, people like Debbie Kawam fall through the cracks. How many people would have known that as she was there with her? By the time she was killed, she now had a walker at the age of 57. plastic bags tied to the walker. She was crawling into the belly of the beast and laying there trying to sleep like dozens of other homeless and emotionally disturbed, and lit up like a torch. And if we go there right now, nothing's changed. Hochul hasn't done a damn thing. Adams hasn't done a damn thing. We spend millions on social workers, and they haven't done a damn thing. So instead of holding people responsible for what they're supposed to be doing, we have no choice but to go ourselves. I've ordered all the guardian angels into the subway system. You've been there, Nancy. You've seen the work we do with the homeless, the emotionally disturbed. We spend time with them. They come to life. Somebody actually treats them like a human being instead of, I don't want to look at them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to talk to them. I just want them out of here. I don't care. Put them in a shelter. Put them in a psychiatric facility. I don't want to know anything about them. Well, if we continue to act like that, we're going to continue to have these problems. Because if we depend on the politicians, ain't nothing going to get done. Oh, nothing. It's going to be the citizens that have to do it. Religious groups, secular groups, going to just have to go down into the system and care for these people, try to encourage them to come to a shelter, come to a mental health care hospital, because our government has failed them. They failed us. And why would we keep expecting success from the very people who haven't addressed this growing issue to begin with? Why do we keep expecting Hochul is going to address it? She hasn't done anything. Adams hasn't done anything. So forget about them. All they're going to do is have a press conference and tell us how good things are and that it's our perception. So I decided, look, I'm going to show people what citizens can do. That's all the guardian angels are. Average, everyday citizens. We train, we organize, we have a dedication like a lot of other people do, and there are other organizations that likewise can do this. We just have to do it. And do it in the name of somebody that might motivate you, like Debbie Kawam and her story. But I'm tired of waiting for government and the police and healthcare experts and shrinks and psychologists. They could easily do this. They choose not to. They could remove them. They choose not to do it. So as a result, then we have to fill the void. So that just gives you a little idea of what I was talking about last night. And it's really the remedy to a lot of problems, because if you're going to be dependent on government, you're always going to be disappointed. They don't spend the time. They don't want to find out why there is the problem. They just want to put the problem out of sight, out of mind. But the problem does not go away. And the problem is growing. You would think we would want to know how some of our neighbors that we grew up with could end up in the streets, could end up addicted, could end up riding the trains, could end up committing suicide and taking their lives, which happens on a regular basis. But we don't. Let's go to Joseph, who's calling from Massachusetts. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Joseph.
Get a hold of me. I couldn't last night. I got too tired. I know you're going to call me, but you're busy as hell. And listen, Nancy, glad to meet you. I have a few things to say about Debbie and about the stupid $9. First, I'll talk about Debbie. She tried it. We don't know what happened. I come from an abused family, Kerr, so I know what it's like. My parents first liked me, and then they became bitter and hated, and they dumped me off. You're right. No one wants to get involved, and I hope you become the mayor, like I told the guy that answered the phone, because knowing you'll straighten this whole mess out. Fire those cops that didn't do anything. Get new cops. Pack the places full of help the homeless, even though they get mad at you and swear at you, you know. We have a talk show host here in Boston that makes fun of them. He calls them bums. I used to be that way, but I learned the hard way, and you're correct. And I feel so bad for Debbie.
Yeah, you must, Joseph. You must stop people when they start casting aspersions against homeless people and emotionally disturbed. You have to remind them, there by the grace of God go you. Bums. What do you mean bums? You think they want to be like this? You see, Nancy, in some people's minds, they say they want to live on the trains. Really? Who the hell wants to be living on a train? First of all, there's no bathrooms. There's no food. There's no water. If you spend one day in a subway, if you had control of your mental and physical faculties, you would lose control of them. You would think you were going crazy. Nobody wants to be in a subway. Nobody wants to live there. Let's go to Eleanor in New Jersey. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Eleanor.
Curtis, God bless you. You have made such a beautiful memory for Debbie or Debrina. I listened to every word you said last night. And believe me, Curtis, I wish every American, especially every politician, heard you tell that story. Curtis, I just don't know where to begin, but I know that someday she will be at the gates of heaven to hug you and kiss you and thank you. And so will her parents.
Well, let's hope, Elena, that when her parents pass into the hereafter, after being tortured for so many years, lost for so many years, that she will be back with her mother that she so desperately was searching for in the last days of her life. I mean, everybody can relate to that. Everybody calls out for their mommy. I don't care how rough and tough guys are. When they're injured or they realize they may be near death, they'll put out a call for their mommy. Let's go to William in Massachusetts. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, William.
Curtis, I heard you play Jersey Girl last night for that woman on the subway, and it broke my heart. I had that record years ago, and it was so beautiful. And I was homeless, 06 through 08, ended up in a VA program called the Community Stabilization Program. I was one of the lucky ones, and she wasn't. But that was so beautiful that you did that for her and pointed it out to these piles of crap that spend money on other things when they should spend it on people that really need it, you know? And
yeah, William, they're our own people. We don't have to look around the world. They're right here with us. We ignore them. We don't want to know about them. I'm sure, William, when you were going through your hard times, people didn't even want to look at you. They didn't even want to make eye contact, figuring like, I don't want to know his problems. I got enough of my own problems.
Yeah. And, you know, but once in a while you'd have some really kind people.
Yeah. No, most people are, William. But unfortunately, the perception is if you're too kind, you're going to get taken advantage of. Don't be a sucker. Don't be a goody two-shoes. Nobody cares. You got to live life. You know, it's tough to survive. You got to put blinders on. Don't look at those people. Look how they're acting out. They're dangerous. Hey, they can be very dangerous. I'm the first to tell you that. But a lot of that is they're afraid of you. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. I know. I've had conversations with them. They're shaking. They're unable to talk. They know that. There was a time they could talk. They could communicate. They know they're having a rough time. It's a miserable existence. And we allow them to live that way. Shame on us. We're in the richest city in the world, in the wealthiest country, with the best medical treatment, the best mental health care, and we allow our own citizens to wallow in their urine and defecation. If a little baby had a dirty water diaper on and was walking around, we'd say, who's their parents? How could you let a child out like that? But when an adult who now is acting like a child because they've lost control of their mental faculties, it's like they have a diaper on and it's dirty. I don't want to deal with that. Oh, God, no. Let me get out of here. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then one day, one of your loved ones, one of your friends ends up like that, and you can't understand, not for the life of you, what the hell happened to that guy or that gal? There's 1,000 stories in the naked city, and a lot of them are not good. But if you don't understand how people get into that condition, how are you going to prevent it? How are you going to prevent it? Let's go to Carl, who's calling from Brooklyn. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Carl.
Yeah, hi, Curtis. Listen, I was homeless for 3-4 months going back a few years ago. And I'm going to tell you something, man. That whole thing in the subway, that's a culture that is all by itself. It's another, and it's another freaking country. I lost my job. I couldn't get no work. People are coming up to me, they say, can I get $1? I got $1. And I'm winding up eating. I got no drugs, no liquor, no alcohol. And I had to sleep in these trains. But, one thing you got to do on the train is you got to sleep in daytime, man. You don't go to sleep at night. That's when they come on to mess with you. I have to sleep. And I would stay awake all night. And thank God, man. Thank God I was able to get a job. I was able to get a job and get off the subway, man. But the cop told me, he said, if I see you on the train next time, I don't care. You don't do nothing wrong, but I don't care. I don't want you on the train. I said, where am I going to go? He says, go outside. Don't go on the train. I want you off the train. Where you going to go, man? The train is your home. He asked me for my address. I give him the train. I said, I'm on the train. I can't go nowhere. You see what I'm saying? And you go to welfare. You go to the shelter. We got too many people, man. With people out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, Carl, I know. You're not a human being any longer. You're not a human being to people anymore. You don't have identification. You don't have an address. You're telling them your home is the subway, and they say, what's wrong with you? And it's not you. It's us. It's us. We're not helping you in your time of need. You can't say it any better than Carl said it. He wasn't in the subway for years. He was down on his luck for a few months, and he was like not even a human being in the eyes of people. The cop, get out of here. Where am I going to go? Imagine it's freezing. In the next few days, it's going to be freezing cold. Where do these people go? A lot of people don't care. And the ones who don't care is the governor and the mayor and the people who can make a difference, because they have nice, warm places to go. They're surrounded by friends, security. They have everything they need to survive, and they don't understand. They wanted to get elected into a position where they can make a difference. This is where they can make a difference. They have failed them, and they have failed us, and they have failed the concept of America where we help our own. And yet, if you're an illegal alien, you get everything free. Hotel, food, warmth, accommodations, apparel, health insurance, iPhones, cell phones. How the hell did that ever come about? And if you're an American, you get ugats. You get bupkis. You're treated less than a human being should be.
WABC. Check this out. No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
You can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
That's Springsteen singing his classic Jersey Girl. Did I remember we were patrolling Somerset and Kensington in Philadelphia, the worst drug use spot in the nation, bar none. And I remember talking to a lot of the homeless, emotionally disturbed, and the drug addicts there. A lot of them were from across the Delaware River in Jersey. And I asked them, how did you end up here, man? This is the end of the line. Kensington and Somerset. It's the worst drug spot in America. And they would tell you their story if you'd listen. But I think part of the problem is nobody ever wants to be around them. Nobody wants to listen to them. Everybody just wants them to go away. They ain't going away. There are people, and we have a duty to take care of them. Because, again, I can't say it enough, there by the grace of God could go us. And imagine if we were treated by people the way we treat them, what a whole different experience we would have. Let's go to Jane in Pennsylvania. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Jane.
Hi, Curtis. I'm a former Bronx girl myself, and I went to St. Nicholas of Tolentine Catholic School. But last night I was up, and I was mesmerized by you at 2 o'clock talking about Debbie. That was the most beautiful eulogy. And you had a lot of fine moments on the station, but I think that was your finest moment, definitely.
Yeah, and because I first, if you remember, Jane, I asked our audience that was very engaged, what's her name? What's her name? And only one guy, Al from Brooklyn, an older black guy, knew her name.
Right.
But nobody else.
I remembered that, yes, when you said that. And it's funny, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I have you on Friday and Saturday night. It's funny, I sleep with you, literally, even though my husband is right next to me. And I just listen and listen and listen. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, Curtis from the Guardian Angels, I remember that when I was a teenager. Of course, I didn't. My parents ran out of the Bronx when it was changing, and we went to the country, which was New Jersey. And then I ran away from home later on and got to Lancaster, PA. But when I think of the Bronx, I used to go there on my vacations to visit my grandma who still lived there, and I had complete freedom going up and down Fordham Road and shopping at Alexander's and everything. And I mean, I'm heartsick to what just everything that's happened to this city. It's horrible. I wouldn't go on this subway, I mean, for $1 million today, and I used to do it as a teenager. My mother would let me do it. We'd go to Shea Stadium as young girls, and you wouldn't dare do it today. It just breaks my heart when I think about how much money we give away in this country, and we can't take care of our own, and the people that really need it. I'm just so happy that you have such a compassionate, generous heart.
Well, Jane, remember, this all comes the way I was brought up, and I know many others who were brought up. It is ironic she went to St. Nicholas at Tolentine High School right off of West Fordham Road and University Avenue, where I had one of my first headquarters of the Guardian Angels, because it was the storefront there that we operated out of after I got fired from McDonald's because they said, we can't keep you on, you're a vigilante. They fired me. Didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. And we operated out of this storefront and on Andrew's place, rough. And we survived against all odds. Father McNally was our mentor from St. Nicholas of Tolentine. He was the street priest. He's the only one who embraced us. Everyone else turned their backs on the Guardian Angels. Everybody in 1979, except for Father McNally, who's no longer with us. Let's go to Joe in New Jersey. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Joe.
Curtis, last night I was listening. You humanized Sabrina. That we don't have happen. I hope this goes really nationally on television, because if it does, maybe they'll start doing something about, the mentally ill that are out in the street. I had a sister that was schizophrenic. She was a nurse anesthetist, making very, very good money. And in her late 30s, the schizophrenia started kicking in. And it got to the point where my mother threw her out of the house because she was becoming violent, and she became homeless. So I understand, what that girl must have been going through. But we never gave up on my sister. We always kept track. I had a son that knew where she was located in Croydon, and they wound up bringing her back. And we looked after her until she passed away. But you humanized Sabrina, and I hope to God that it becomes national on TV, so that maybe it opens up a lot more eyes.
No, it should. Joe, your experience of having a valued family member who all of a sudden, because of this horror of schizophrenia, you could not even deal with her any longer. Your mother had to ask her to leave for the good of the whole family, but never lost track of her, always stayed in contact and brought her home, is really the only remedy. Because when we institutionalize these people, when we drug them up, when we put them out of sight, out of mind, that's not the answer, Joe. We know that. That was done decades ago. But the humanization of treating them like fellow human beings with all the problems that they bring to us, with help from government, because that's what government is supposed to be. They're there to help. And they abandon us time and time again and basically said, well, there's nothing we could do, Joe. So assuming, let's say your sister had ended up on the subway and was having episodes and then ended up attacking somebody and then all of a sudden ended up being incarcerated or put in an institution, a psychiatric hospital, no family, no contacts with anyone. How do you think these people feel? They're out there on their own. And we've allowed this to happen. Let's go to Mark in New York. Your turn to be heard here at WABC, Mark.
Hey, Curtis. About 2.5 weeks ago, I had an experience. I didn't know that it would be timely to the discussion. I was walking on West 44th Street, and there's a new dramatist theater, which used to be a church. And up the couple of steps, about 4 steps, was a guy huddled in blankets in the freezing cold we had about 2-3 weeks ago. And I happened to be coming back. It was about 2 a.m. I had groceries, and I said, hello. I walked in and started talking. I said, are you hungry? Can you use some bread? He said, no, I'm not hungry. Thank you. Can you use some money? No, not really. And then he said, just tell me what your name is. I said, I'm Mark. He said, I'm Leo. I started to engage him in talk. He sounded perfectly coherent. I didn't know what to do further. I said, I don't want to interrupt your privacy, but I hope that life gets a little better for you. He said, I'll hope to speak to you again on the block. Just what you're saying. People it's not always that they need something to eat or something to want. They want to be treated like a human being. I realized that once I started talking with him.
Yeah, it's human contact.
Human contact, exactly.
They want you to treat them like a fellow human being, not like an outcast, like an aluminum can that gets discarded because you've already used them. They know you're afraid of them. They can sense that. They know that people shy away from them, walk away from them. It's got to be horrific.
In this particular instance, I wasn't the least bit afraid of him, but a certain pietà, a certain pity came out, and I'm wondering basically what put you in. And I engaged him in conversation. Is anyone coming for you? He said, well, I have a friend. He may be here later. And he didn't go into any details, but I didn't know how much might be delusionary or how much might be the truth. But I think the main thing you're saying is no matter how low people fall, they still are a member of our common humanity.
Exactly.
And we are only as good as the lowest of us is.
That is true. And it all gets back to what my father told me. Mark, there by the grace of God go you. So when you were talking to that guy on the steps and you were realizing, okay, I have groceries, I have a place to go to, this gentleman does not.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between him and you? It would take hours of conversation to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, and it could be just plain chance.
Exactly. Or a traumatic situation in a person, right, in a person's life that so alters their mindset that it's hard for them to get back on track. Could be drugs, could be alcohol, could be a personal trauma so intense that the pain is with them 24 hours, 7 days a week. And there's no way to medicate that out. But those persons are salvageable. They can be brought back on track. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It's something that our government just does not want to do. Look, Tunnel to Towers, such a great organization that came in the aftermath of the attack of 9/11, Steven Siller, we've heard the story, and what should be said over and over, is on his way home in Staten Island. He realizes the One World Trade Center is up in smoke. He immediately grabs his bunker gear out of the back of his car, runs through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, and is consumed into the belly of the beast, killed like so many others. He didn't have to do that. And his brother and their family put together this great organization. And this year is dedicated to providing homes for veterans who are living in the streets, in the parks, in the subways all throughout America. Why the hell should Tunnel to Towers have to do that? Veterans, men and women who have served in wartime or peacetime, who, because of a multitude of reasons, are living in the streets, the subways, and the parks, and we need a private organization to do this with a government that spends billions on illegal aliens to make sure that they have all the comforts of home? Something wrong that a private organization has to do that. And government forsakes it. You serve America, you risk your life, you help preserve our freedoms. But when you have a problem, wallow in your own defecation and you're tough noogies. You want a room at the Roosevelt Hotel? You're not an illegal alien. You get ugats. You get bupkis.
WABC. New York's talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
Kindly Sergeant Krupke, you gotta understand, it's just our bringing upkey that gets us out of hand. Our mothers all are junkies, our fathers all are drunks. Golly Moses, naturally we're punks. Gee, Officer Krupke, we're very upset. We never had the love that every child ought to get. We ain't no delinquents, we're misunderstood. Deep down inside us there is good. There is good. There is good. There is good. There is untapped good. Like inside the worst of us is good.
That's a touching good story.
Let me tell it to the world.
Just tell it to the judge. Come on,
Classic West Side Story involving the Sharks and the Jets and Officer Krupke, who became the prototype for a cop back then, walking a beat. And there's something very unique nowadays that when we're asked, no matter who we are, how do you remedy the problem that we have with this just nonstop crime in the subways and the streets of New York City? I was listening to former police commissioner Bill Bratton on with John Catsimatidis, his guests Sunday morning, 8 to 10. He said, one thing, we need more cops. I was on with Brian Kilmeade on Fox News on Saturday night. He asked me, what's the remedy? I said, more cops. Everybody says more cops. And what do we get? Less cops. So huge stories in the New York Post this morning talked about how recruitment is not meeting its quotas. There are less and less men and women desiring to become members of the police department. They're being recruited away. There's early retirement. Many of them are quitting. And there doesn't seem to be a focus at all of either the governor, the mayor, or any of the entities to do the one thing that everybody, whether they're police experts or not, say would help remedy this problem. More freaking police. Remember, it was de Blasio who took $1 billion out of the budget, the police budget, and they danced the horror and the tarantella and applauded that in the city council chambers. The police commissioner at that time, the lapdog Dermot Shea, he should just be put into exile. He agreed. He said, oh, yeah, we can take $1 billion away. Eric Adams gets elected. He doesn't even put $1 billion back, doesn't put that back a nickel, dime, or penny, but gave $5 billion to illegal aliens. $5 billion of our dollars. How the hell do you not hire more cops? So now we're at the precipice of a continued crime increase and crisis. And the one answer that everybody comes up with, we need more cops, and they do absolutely jack diddly squat nothing about it. Well, we'll keep pounding away that message, as Bill Bratton was pounding it away, as Ray Kelly pounded it away as a guest with Sid Rosenberg on Friday morning. Everybody's saying the same thing, but they're not doing anything about it. Those that have the power to do it are elected officials. Up next, though, we can do something for our furry little friends. Boy, a cold snap is coming in. It's going to be Arctic-style weather conditions for animals indoors, but mostly animals outdoors. And there's nobody better to tell you what to do than my wife, Nancy. It's the Animal Welfare Hour, and it's everything you need to know about our furry little friends.